Our prediction is that Bitcoin's going to get over $200,000 by the end of the year. I actually look at those dips like the one we've seen this year, which you mentioned at the top. I think a phenomenal opportunity because from my view, the long-term output for where Bitcoin is going is better today than it was 6 months ago and better than it was 2 years ago. And if that's the case, this pullback is just a discount. Bitcoin's on sale. That's what I think is true.
So you're buying the dip?
I am buying the dip. Absolutely.
But only Bitcoin though.
Well, yes. I think Bitcoin has the cleanest case right now. I think you're going to see 10, maybe more governments around the world make their first allocation to Bitcoin this year. It's happening. People aren't talking about it that much, but it's happening and it's a very big deal.
Matt Hougan kicks things off with a bold prediction. Bitcoin could eclipse $200,000 before the end of the year. But here's the catch. We're in a strange paradox. Price action looks weak, yet the fundamentals have never been stronger. According to Hougan, this disconnect is only temporary. We're in a fog of economic uncertainty, but once that clears, Bitcoin's momentum could come roaring back. If you're feeling confused by the current market, you're not alone. But understanding this dynamic is key to seeing what's next. Like this kind of insight? Here's how you can help us grow. Smash that like button. It helps get this video in front of more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a shift in the crypto market. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one, and we want to hear your take. Thanks for being here. Let's get into it.
Our prediction is that Bitcoin's going to get over $200,000 by the end of the year. What's happening right now is you have a huge amount of good news in Bitcoin. You have a U.S. strategic reserve where the government now owns Bitcoin. You have improvements on the regulatory front. You have institutional adoption. You may be wondering, why aren't prices higher? The reason is we've had a bunch of economic uncertainty that's caused not just Bitcoin, but all risky assets to fall. Stocks are down substantially. So the market has dipped. But I think over time, as that economic volatility subsides, you're going to see all that good news catch up to Bitcoin, and it's going to propel it to new all-time highs and indeed above $200,000 for the year. There are two things to keep your eye on. So one, Bitcoin's price is set by supply and demand, and we all know the supply, right? There'll only be 21 million. We only make 165,000 new ones a year. So you have to watch the demand. The three things to watch are ETFs gaining inflows, are corporations like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet continuing to buy Bitcoin, and our government's buying Bitcoin. If those three things happen, I think the $200,000 target is a lock. So I would keep your eye on that. It would help if the economy improves, if we don't enter a recession, that would help. But it's really about, does the demand materialize in the way I think it will? Every sign that I see suggests that ETFs are buying, corporations are buying, and governments are buying. That's why I'm so bullish, but they have to keep buying in order for us to get to that $200,000 target. Last year, ETFs bought 500,000 Bitcoin. Again, remember, the Bitcoin network only produced 165,000 Bitcoin. So it bought 3 times the total supply. Corporations bought 250,000 Bitcoin. Governments, I think this year could buy a couple 100,000 Bitcoin. So I think if you look at those 3 sources, I think they'll buy more than 1 million Bitcoin this year. And where is it going to come from? The only place it can come from is people who already hold Bitcoin. The only way they will sell is if the price goes up. That's why I'm so bullish on the market.
Sorry, government? Which branch of the government?
Look, the U.S. already established a strategic Bitcoin reserve, right? It already holds $17 billion in Bitcoin. And the executive order from President Trump told the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Treasury to figure out ways to acquire more Bitcoin without impacting the tax holder. How could they do that? They could sell some of the gold that the U.S. has. They could sell other crypto assets that the U.S. has and plow that into Bitcoin. I think we're going to see that happen this year. I think the U.S. is going to increase, and not just the U.S. We found out that Abu Dhabi bought $500 million of Bitcoin. We've gotten calls from multiple other governments that are investigating Bitcoin. I think you're going to see 10, maybe more governments around the world make their first allocation to Bitcoin this year. It's happening. People aren't talking about it that much, but it's happening and it's a very big deal. You know, first, it's important to remember that there's a difference between the strategic reserve, which is Bitcoin only, and this crypto asset stockpile. My base case is that they looked at the market and they took the largest assets, right? Those are essentially the largest assets, excluding a few assets, excluding Binance Coin, excluding Tron. So
Doge.
Excluding Doge. Yes, they didn't want Doge. But it's maybe the largest sort of US-centric blockchains. I don't think there's more to it than that. But I think the strategic reserve is the big deal. The stockpile is just going to hold those assets. The strategic reserve, I think, is going to go out into the market and end up acquiring more Bitcoin. I think that's a very big deal. What we see in the data is that when there's a challenging moment for like the NASDAQ, Bitcoin dips and then rips. What do I mean by that? If you look at all the days where the S&P 500 is down 2% or more over the last decade, Bitcoin on average is down 2.6% on those days. So it's actually worse than just holding stocks. But if you fast forward a year from there, it's up 190% on average. So I think what happens is it's, again, a risk asset. When the market goes risk off, you increase your discount factor on risk assets. And the more volatile they are, the harder they fall. But the long-term tailwind is so strong that they pick back up. I actually look at those dips like the one we've seen this year, which you mentioned at the top. I think a phenomenal opportunity because from my view, the long-term outlook for where Bitcoin is going is better today than it was 6 months ago and better than it was 2 years ago. And if that's the case, this pullback is just a discount. Bitcoin's on sale. That's what I think is true.
So you're buying the dip,
I am buying the dip. Absolutely.
but only Bitcoin though.
Well, yes. I think Bitcoin has the cleanest case right now. I'm very optimistic on Ethereum. I'm very optimistic on Solana, but I think they have more sort of wood to chop, work to do before they get out of their existential troubles. You have to see regulation pass. You have to see institutional DeFi. You have to see greater adoption. It's probably a great contrarian bet. If you're a long-term investor, this is a great time to access Ethereum or Solana. If you're a short-term investor, I think there could be volatility ahead. Bitcoin, I think, has clear sailing. Some of the DeFi assets, I think, have clear sailing. Those layer ones in the middle, I think, could face, more months of churn.
But Matt Hougan is quick to flag one major risk that could derail his $200,000 Bitcoin forecast: a global recession with no government response. If central banks keep interest rates elevated and governments hold back on fiscal support, Bitcoin could do the opposite of what bulls expect. It could drop back to $72,000 or even lower. However, Hougan makes it clear he doesn't see that playing out. In his view, the moment economic cracks start to widen, governments will blink. They've done it before, and he believes they'll step in again to avoid a deep, prolonged recession. That intervention, he argues, would turbocharge liquidity and send Bitcoin sharply higher. Let's watch more clips from the interview.
You said DeFi products. What are we talking about?
Yeah, so if you look at things like Uniswap or Ondo Finance or Aave, the activity on those is at all-time highs. And they've proven themselves through multiple volatile markets, and the regulation is improving significantly. And so I think we're going to see people realize that those are already at all-time highs. We're just not thinking about them. So as excited as we were about DeFi in 2021 and the DeFi summer, we were all thinking about those assets. People have sort of forgotten about them, but behind the scenes, their business is better than ever. And it's actually growing really fast, and they actually benefit from the huge regulatory shift in Washington. I think there could be a DeFi boom at the end of this year. So if I were looking for sort of the safe play in crypto, I would look at Bitcoin. If I were looking for underloved assets that could really be revalued, I would look all the way down to things like Uniswap and Aave. I think there's a real opportunity there. The thing I'm most confident about in crypto, more than anything else, is that crypto, the industry, will be much more important in the future than it is today. That this will be a 10, 20, $30 trillion market. That's what I feel the most if that's what you're confident about, just buy an index fund, because you're going to get that 10x appreciation. You won't have to pick and choose assets. I think active will have a place too, because it's definitely an inefficient market and they're very smart managers who can pick and choose assets. Those managers just aren't me. So for my bet, index-based investing is the right bet for most people. But for sure, there's going to be a vibrant active market, and we know some great active managers out there. There's space for both to exist. Recessions negatively impact all risk assets until the government decides to provide economic support.
So Bitcoin is a risk asset.
It is a risk asset in the short term. So if we look like we're driving into a recession, and the government doesn't look like it's going to lower interest rates or provide quantitative easing or fiscal support, that will be negative for Bitcoin. That could send us back to the $72,000 level. It could send us potentially below that. But my guess is that governments will come in and support the economy. I think we've made it very difficult to have a real recession. I know we're talking tough in the US, but I think the government will ultimately blink. I think you'll see that in Europe. You're already seeing Germany doing that. I think you'll see that in parts of Asia. You're seeing economic stimulus in China right now. I think that's going to grow. So ultimately, I think we'll blink before we get a big recession. But if we do enter a severe recession, my $200,000 target probably won't happen. That would be challenging for Bitcoin. The way I think about XRP is it's proven a few things. It's a blockchain that's worked for a very long period of time. It's extremely low cost to operate. It processes high amounts of transaction volume at very low cost. It has a strong community. The problem with XRP is it hasn't developed its primary use cases. It was designed to be a B2B blockchain, right? Business to business transactions, international payments. That really hasn't materialized. I would argue the reason it hasn't materialized is it faced a major lawsuit from the SEC, existential regulatory threat, and now we get to see what it can do. There's no guarantee that it succeeds. I think it's entirely possible that you would come back and do an interview in 2 years and nothing happened on XRP. The ETF didn't gather assets and the asset is down. But I think what the crypto community misses is it's also possible that now that they're able to try to execute on their strategy, that they in fact succeed. And you're seeing significant technological progress on the XRPR ledger. So I would say it's a divisive coin for a reason, which is there are worlds where it amounts to nothing and worlds where it's very successful. We'll see which world materializes in the next few years. But people who guarantee it will be a huge success are wrong, and people who guarantee it will go to zero are also wrong. We think it's in the middle. So we can't talk much about the ETP beyond what's in the filing, but what's in the filing is it's an ETP that will hold XRP in cold storage. It's passively managed. It's just an exposure vehicle. Some people can buy crypto directly. That's great. We love it, particularly people who self-custody. We think that's fantastic. Other people need an ETP. And so we designed these wrappers to make it easy for traditional investors to access the space.
Are people asking for it?
Yeah, again, yes, absolutely. I know in crypto it's a divisive market, but the thing about divisive market is there are cadres of fans. There are people who want an XRP ETF. Absolutely. There are people who wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, and there are people who will embrace it like it was, a teddy bear. I think both of those will exist in the market. Problem with meme coins, there are two. They come and go, they're ephemeral, and then they're controlled by insiders who rug people. Most meme coins you should avoid, like the plague. Dogecoin has been around for a while, and there are no insiders, so it's fine. But it's not the future of finance. The future of finance is being built on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and a few other assets. Those are the serious assets. People could speculate on certain meme coins, but it's mostly not for me.
Bitcoin's long-term outlook has never been stronger. Yes, Bitcoin may be facing some short-term headwinds, but step back, and the long-term picture has never looked better. Institutional adoption is accelerating. Governments are entering the market. Bitcoin ETFs are scooping up supply at a breakneck pace. And behind the scenes, DeFi is quietly hitting new all-time highs. If Matt Hougan's predictions play out, we're not just looking at a price surge, we're witnessing a paradigm shift in how the world interacts with digital assets. Enjoyed this breakdown? Keep going. Check out the other videos on this channel for more deep dives into Bitcoin, crypto trends, macroeconomics, and digital finance. If you're serious about staying ahead of the curve, there's plenty more waiting for you. Like this video to support insight-driven content. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear your take. Thanks for watching and stay tuned. See you on next video.